The 5 things are, number one, you got to know the game clock. And again, this isn't practice one stuff, but it's stuff that as you go through the season and you call a particular play, hey, you got double slants on one side and slant flat on the other side, or you got a triangle in the middle of the field, a 12-yard route and a couple checkdowns. Well, in the first half, first quarter, you're going to treat that way different than the 2-minute drive at the end of the game when you have no timeouts. Knowing the scoreboard, having an understanding of how the time that's on the clock may affect the play that you're running. Obviously, in particular, a pass play. But if you're a zone read team, that may be different. Your quarterback may need to be a little bit more aggressive in the fourth quarter and so on and so forth. But, the first half versus the second half, as I kind of mentioned, a 2-minute drive at the end of the first half or at the end of the game. Those are different situations. Those are different scenarios. Those are things that you, in the course of your preparation for the season, you got to cover with your quarterback if he's a guy that can handle all that. Hopefully you've got a guy that's experienced enough that he can handle that. But a 2-minute situation at the end of the first half versus end of the second half. A 4-minute situation. So we're trying to run the clock out. You may be a lot more apt to check it down on a 3rd and 8 than trying to sneak a dig route in there and throw it through a tire. Those are situations you got to cover with your quarterback. And then lastly, hey, if we don't have any timeouts, you got and it's a clock situation, a 2-minute situation at the end of a half, you got to get the ball down the field a little bit more. So those are all things that I think it's really important to cover in a classroom setting with your quarterback. The next thing is after the game clock is we need to know the score. Again, everything depends on these aspects of the scoreboard. First being how much time, and then the score if we're way behind, if we're way ahead, however that might work. Early in the game, you're going to go through your progressions maybe a little bit differently midway through the first quarter than you would at the end of the third quarter or end of the fourth quarter with a big lead or a big deficit. So we're going to talk about those things with our quarterbacks. Is it a close game and we're running our base offense? Hey, just kind of do what you do. Take completions. Stay on schedule. I'm not going to get a chance to talk about it in this half hour, but I have a number of slides on what our thoughts are on first down, what our thoughts are on second and medium, second and long, second and short, and how we're going about those situations. But a big lead, hey, I want to take care of the ball. I want to make sure that, I don't give the opponent a short field trying to force a pass in there. But so understanding the score, are we down big? If we have a big deficit, then we're going to have to take some risk. We're going to have to push the ball down the field. I get a one-on-one down the field for a big play. I'm going to have to take my chances on that. Where maybe if you got a big lead, hey, just take the ball, check it down, move the chains. The next thing after the game clock and the score that we need to know, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, is down and distance. We certainly all have our 7-on-7 sessions and our team sessions that we work. And a lot of those early in the year, maybe in the summer when the guys are working on their own, everything's 1st and 10, just concentrating and focusing on the play and the execution of the play. But as you go through the season, you may call the same pass on 1st and 10 that you do on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 3 or even 4th down. They become different plays. If it's 2nd and 1, hey, we're calling a post and an over. We're trying to be aggressive. We're trying to take a shot. We want to take advantage of having the extra down. So I need to spend time in the offseason going through that situation with our quarterback and then sharing in the game plan. Hey, we get a 2nd and 1 and I call post and an over. Well, then we definitely don't want to sack. There's no doubt we don't want to turn it over. And we'll get into how we diagram our plays or how we categorize our plays here in a minute. But that's a situation, 2nd and 1, where if we call pass, hey, nothing bad can happen, only good things can happen. Those are conversations to be had, not on the headset or not looking them in the eye on 2nd and 1 in your first game. The next thing is field position. Again, if we're on the 2-yard line coming out, we're going to attack things a little bit differently than maybe we would if we're on the 30-yard line going in. And talking through the guys about those situations. And I'll get into a little bit of those in more detail here in a second. The last thing with the scoreboard is the play clock. And, obviously at the college level, we're able to have a play clock or shot clock, whatever you want to call it. And I know maybe at the high school level, you aren't always fortunate enough to have that. But usually you have a referee telling you there's 10 seconds. Again, not something you start out practice 1 necessarily with a play clock, but certainly putting your quarterback in a situation where the clock is counting down and we want to get the play snapped without burning a timeout or losing 5 yards. Those are all things that we are going to practice, not necessarily practice 1, but we are going to put our quarterback in situations where the clock is counting down and we need to get the thing snapped so they're able to have some familiarity with the hurry up process, whether you have a way of letting the line, mayday, 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 if you're a huddle team or a series of claps or some sort of code word, we're going to practice that and talk about it in the off season. So those are the 5 things associated with the scoreboard that we feel like our quarterback needs to know pre-snap or be aware of, and you got to mentally practice. The next thing are the X's and O's of the actual play. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our tempo or the cadence. I just kind of mentioned, if you're a huddle team versus a no huddle team. If you're a no huddle team, you may be try and go super fast. You may want to be able to mix up that tempo. So that's the first thing that we need to know. Are we going to try and give the illusion of going fast, but in actuality, we are going to, look back to the sideline or have 2 or 3 plays called, however you utilize tempo or your cadence. So that's the first thing. You may have a quarterback that you give the ability to go on a 3rd and 3 situation. When do you want to go on 2? When do you not? When do you want to try and draw the defense offside if that's something you give your quarterback the power to do? The next thing is the formations. And, obviously we put a lot on our tight ends and our receivers and to get lined up to make sure that we don't have too many men in the backfield. And they have the chief responsibility of knowing how to get lined up and what makes a guy covered or uncovered. But I'd love for our quarterback to understand, maybe he's able to save us from covering up a tight end on a pass play and costing us a big play and getting us lined up. But obviously motions and shifts, teams, it seems like more now than ever are motioning and shifting almost every play. And I think in some ways that's easier on a quarterback because he's used to it. If you're a team that doesn't motion and shift very often, and then you do on a play, man, it seems like that quarterback forgets the snap count or the motion all the time. We tell our guys, hey, cross your fingers if there's a motion or a shift on a play. Have some sort of mechanism that's going to keep you from getting the ball snapped before you motion or shift to get the play run. So that's the second thing. Then obviously the third thing is going to be the play. And again, these are things pre-snap that the quarterback needs to be aware of. The play, and as I mentioned earlier, we kind of divide our plays up into explosive and efficient plays. If we've called a play that's explosive, then we want the big play if at all possible. All right, we're willing to maybe take a little bit of a risk getting the ball down the field. But at the same time, we're apt to call more explosive passes, more explosive plays, whether it be a reverse or some sort of a fancy running play. We're more apt to call those if we take care of the ball and they don't result in negative plays. We're willing to take more of a risk getting the ball down the field.